Want to achieve network marketing success? Then join the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, hey, it is my privilege to welcome Mr. Paul Hart to the show tonight. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me, John. Looking forward to our discussion.
I appreciate it. And now you've been in the financial service field for over 20 years.
Yes, I have.
You were a mechanic. So how did you go from mechanic to financial services? That's kind of two very different professions.
Yeah, well, I was at the time I was working as a mechanic. I was going to San Jose State University, and I'm an artist too. I just loved working with my hands. I love painting and drawing, and that was kind of the route that I chose. And as I'm going to school, I got introduced to the industry, and I just realized as I'm going through San Jose State in college, the one thing I'm not learning is finance and getting a financial education and literacy. So when I got introduced to the industry, I did not believe I can do it. I was broke and I was a college kid living with my dad. But I figured while I'm in my learning phases, why not take this as a class? And I'm going to learn the ins and outs. And 20 years later, I'm still here. Never went back. So I was going to college for digital animation, digital media, and never went back. So here we are.
Interesting.
And I still work on my cars though, John. I got a classic car out there. I only work on my own cars now though. I love classic cars, but nobody else's.
Well, what are you working on now? Because my son is the ultimate young car junkie. So I got to tell him what, he'd shoot me if I didn't ask. What are you working on?
Well, this one's an heirloom and it's all restored. It's a 65 Pontiac GTO, which was kind of the car that started the muscle car revolution. My dad bought it off the showroom floor in 1965. I wanted to restore it before he passed away, and he passed away a couple of months before I got it cherry again. And now he rides with me passenger from the heavens, and I drive him every day. I drive classic car. I love him. Beautiful. So yeah.
And that's what they used to call the GOAT, right?
The GOAT. That's what the license plate says. Yeah.
I'm showing my age. Remember, a couple of my guys I wrestled with in high school, they had the GOATs way back in the 70s. And
yeah.
Now you've built your financial service practice with your wife, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
So let me ask you a question on that. Okay. I work with my wife and I know she has strengths, she has weaknesses. I have strength, I have weaknesses. How have you guys kind of identified, hey, here's what Paul does well, and here's what Mrs. Hart does well? And how do you avoid conflict and tripping over each other so that you're both happy in the business relationship part of your life?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'll refer to my weaknesses because this is being recorded versus her weaknesses. Just kidding. But so we met actually in the company. So I was coming up and she was in a completely different organization in Southern California. And I live in Northern California. And the company as a whole ran a contest to go to a Caribbean island, and we both qualified. So she was a higher performer in her organization she was with. So when we land at the Caribbean island, they were having a little get together at a bar, and I bump into her. And honestly, I just never met somebody who was driven. I mean, I've been recruiting and developing and training salespeople for all this time, and it was just very hard to find motivated people that saw the world like me and had aspirations to do what I did. And I was single. I landed at the bar, and then the whole trip was couples. So the organization she was with, they sent her to me just to kind of not be the third wheel. And we connected, and I literally fell in love at first sight. I'd never met anybody who thought like her, and she was easy on the eyes as well. I had noticed her right when I walked in and thought, wow, what if? And somebody taps me on the shoulder, I guess, your affirmations come true. And I looked, and they were introducing me to her, and the rest was history. And after a couple of months, literally, she shut down her business, just left it with the organization she was with, moved up to Northern California with a man she barely met, but the distance was kind of hurting us. We just had to live together and just get this thing started. And because she was already experienced and I was already experienced, we kind of merged. Now she's an A-type personality and so am I. So that presented the challenge. Who's gonna be the beta, so to speak, if one's the alpha? And at the end of the day, what we did was we just found our strengths and what we love to do. We had both mastered each element of the business ourselves. And I want to say, like, she added a woman's touch. She sees things, understands people's feelings from a leadership perspective that I didn't understand. She was the eyes that I couldn't see, and we just established our roles. And she would kind of be more of the generator. I was more of the one seeing the clients and training and developing the people, and she would generate things. And we had a couple bumps in the road and had a few arguments here and there, but then we realized we're over here trying to lead thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands, to eventually millions. Let's get over ourselves for the better of everybody else. And I think I put my ego in my back pocket as best as I could, and we said, let's go serve people and get out of our own way. And ever since then, I don't even know what it's like to not work with your spouse. I'm so proud of her. I mean, we dreamed together. We planned our future out together. We then had our children. They watched us dream together, plan together, hit our goals. And it's just been a dream. And I don't see any other way other than working with my spouse now. And people ask, how in the world did you do it? At first, it wasn't easy. Now I don't know how to work without her.
Now, in your business, which is in financial services, do one of you do more of the administrative side, one do the sales side, or you both just kind of do what you do and just kind of, her clients are her clients, your clients are your clients? I mean, how do you handle some of that?
Yeah. So we were both fully licensed with securities and insurance, and we just said to put everything under my license. So what she ended up doing was more on the prospecting end. She's a leader. So to be on the administrative end, which is what a lot of spouses did, we inspired a lot of people in our organization to work as a power couple, because that's what we identified ourselves as a power couple. She was not a supportive spouse. She was in the trenches with me. And she didn't want to touch administrative work. We just hired administrative staff for that. She's an actual influential leader that I felt would be kind of suppressing her talents just to be an administrator. And we hired staff and things, and it was almost taboo if anybody considered her to be on the operational side, because she was a leader just like me. Now, she ventured off. The previous company we were with, they, in my opinion, got a little bit too corporate and stopped recognizing the partner. They stopped recognizing the spouse. And there was a time where they recognized spouses together, which inspired other spouses to work together. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. And once they started recognizing Paul, because everything was under my license, she said, you know what? I'd like to explore one of her other passions, which was real estate. So now she ventured off into real estate, and we're kind of creating a full service financial services operation. But I just brought her to a big event, which we had called our Impact Awards at the launch of our very first year of this new startup we developed. And she got excited again, nothing like the power of a big event. And I said, look, I got so many things going. Like you said, John, triple booked myself. I'm just running a mile a minute. And I said, I need somebody. I don't want you to be the administrative, because that was like a 4-letter word to her. But can you oversee our administration and make sure because nobody has skin in the game like her for the business. And rather than just having an employee to administer it. So she has now said, I'm going to help you, because I'm a type A personality. I'll just leave crumbs and not even know what I don't know what I don't know. So she has finally taken a senior operations perspective. But nonetheless, she's right now in Southern California in the Santa Barbara area with her real estate career, because she is an amazing prospector. And to get into real estate in a very saturated market, she broke in and just upped her prospecting game to the next level, So that's what she did. She generated them by prospecting. She's beautiful. They probably would run away from me. And then I would do the advising and the recruitment and training, etc.
Great. Well, it's great because, sometimes you meet couples and one's got one skill set, the other's got the other skill set. And sometimes you can tell that they're just at loggerheads, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa. And then, I mean, I don't generally interview couples, and normally individuals like we are now, but sometimes you deal with them in business and you're like, I can tell there's a little tension here, just back off,
Yeah.
So I always ask that question when I know couples work together. It's like, okay, so who does what? and who does what well, and how do you not trip over each other? But you just answered that very well, and I can see why you're both so successful. So we're going to come back to your startup in a minute, but I want to ask you some other questions. So let's talk about mentorship. You're in a business, especially in training with financial services. You're in a business that mentorship is so important.
Yeah.
Two questions here. One, how were you mentored? If you want to mention your mentors too, you can. Some of our people may know them, they may not. That doesn't really matter. But what did they teach you, your mentors? And then second question, let's come back to how you mentor people. But let's start with who mentored you and how did they, do so?
Yeah. So great question. Because the root word of mentorship is mental, right? I believe I had stinking thinking. I thought very negatively. I didn't understand the power of a positive mindset, affirmations. And ultimately, I was creating everything prior to getting into this. I didn't realize it was all a self-fulfilling prophecy based on my thoughts. So, they introduced, I guess my first introduction to mentorship was people telling me to go read, leaders or readers, and they told me to read the book Think and Grow Rich, which I kind of fell asleep in because I wasn't ready to read it when I read it. And then I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was an easier book for me to read. And then it just inspired me that, wow, there are books that I like to read. So I think early on, a lot of my mentors were authors that didn't even realize that they helped me so much. And then I got introduced to the industry by a buddy of mine who is now my mentor for sure. But at the time, his name's Eric Olson, and he's the founder of our company. But when I got started 20 years ago, he was 21 and I was 24, and we're entering into this massive industry called the insurance and financial industry. And that was in that age, I was kind of a senior. He was a freshman in high school. And so I didn't look at him as a mentor, but I feel like he is literally the GOAT of at least our model and where we're at, because I am just so fortunate to have been under his example. So what he provided was an example, and now he's just done so many things that he is definitely a mentor to so many people. But as we were coming up as young guns and didn't really know much, we're young, making money, or at first not making money, and then we did. We got the interest of a gentleman who's pretty big on social media now, who wasn't before, and I'll mention his name. His name is Ed Mylett, and Ed Mylett's pretty big there. There's also a gentleman which our previous company had a lot of great people, from a Patrick Bet-David who's out in Valuetainment now. He was in our company, and I learned a lot from him. And now I see on a business perspective how he sold his insurance operation, and now he's in politics and doing what he's doing, competing with Joe Rogan, not competing, but collaborating with Joe Rogan. So I was a byproduct of great examples. The co-founder of our company was local, built his business in San Jose as well. And so I said Ed Mylett, he mentored us, and this is what we said, through CDs. So I became a byproduct of just turning my car into a classroom and listening to audios over and over and over and over, because I feel when I came to this company, I was 180-degree about face from where I needed to be to succeed, just because of the route that I chose, my environment. We grew up kind of on the wrong side of the tracks around a bunch of gangs and drugs and all kind of craziness. And so my worldview was not where it needed to be, hence why I was so negative and toxic thinking. And so I knew I needed a change. And I just didn't want to embarrass myself and reach out for mentorship. So audios came to me, and I literally dove into them. And I started reading, and I became known as somebody in my company that was very dialed in on self-development, because my articulation of my ideas started to change, my mastery of the English language, which I'm still working, because I was horrible when I started. Even though I was born in the United States, I always tell people English was my second language because I had to learn how to speak proper English and get clients to say, I will part with the check and trust you with my retirement. And as I started listening, because I feel Ed was one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard in my life, and I started kind of copying him and modeling him, and got on his radar. They took us under his wing. He took us under his wing and taught us a lot. And ever since then, a lot of people in our company started mentoring me. So audios, books, reaching out, and now the GOAT of our industry, Eric Olson, I feel is going to take us to the next level. So if it wasn't for mentorship, John, I would be nowhere. And now I've dedicated my life to mentoring others. because all my mentors I see now, they just want to pay it forward. They don't want us to pay them back. They just want us to pay it forward. So as we launched this new company, I dedicated my life to just be a vessel. You know, maybe I am good at this. We were talking a little earlier about things that could be said that you didn't even realize you impacted somebody's life that you didn't even realize. As I've done a lot of national speaking, I've met a lot of people that I never even knew, that I've created such an impact just through being an orator. I was like, wow, I'm actually good at this, which was my biggest fear in the world, was public speaking. I'm an introverted person, but I realized I think God put me here to do this, and I can't just hang up my cleats and retire. I got to be a mentor for others now. So it doesn't matter to me what industry they're in. I just love educating people and teaching them what I've learned.
So what would you say? Okay, so you get a young age or a new agent, maybe it's somebody my age that's coming back into the workforce, maybe a retirement job, or maybe they're on the other side. Maybe they're 21, 22-year-old kids, and they're saying, hey, you know what? The 9 to 5 hourly thing, I get that that's not where I want to be. Financial services is a great industry. It's been great for a lot of people for a lot of years, a lot of years. What's your 3 keys to mentoring a new agent when you bring them in to get them off to a good start, but a solid start? Besides the obvious, I mean, they got to study for their licenses and, you know, all the applicable stuff in an industry that's heavily regulated, like what you're in. But what do you teach them? How do you guide them so that they get that daily method of operation, so that they go out, they see ink strike paper, they start to make a little bit of money? What's your keys?
Well, the first thing is to kind of hit the nail on the head and overcome the concerns and the objections that I already know are going to come up for them, because I've been doing this for so long. So one is kind of understanding the difference between the employee mindset and the entrepreneur's mindset, and realizing that the school system has ultimately bred us to become employees. And so they've been ingrained for years and years and years to go work for somebody else, negotiate for a salary. If it's not hourly or salary and it's commission, it must be wrong. So I got to get them to realize that we have to shift your way of thinking, and such thing exists, the entrepreneur versus the employee, and how we've been taught to make other people wealthy. So I kind of just address the elephant in the room that they may not even know is the elephant in the room. And then I prepare them for early negatives. A friend of mine, Steve Siebold, who's big in the self-development space as well, he says one of the biggest things, and it really hit me, and I didn't even realize I really did it, is for people is approval addiction, is they're addicted to the approval of other people. And so if the friends and family that they're around and grew up, which are good people, well-meaning people, if they're all employee-minded, when you pay to start a job on commission to sell life insurance, which is like the worst words you could possibly tell your mom when you come home that day, they think you got scammed. And everybody thought it was a scam, or they thought it was a pyramid. So we had to, versus just ignoring it and then keeping our fingers crossed and hopefully they don't hear that, eventually we just found people fell off. So when I started just hitting the nail on the head, letting them know what they're going to experience, it's going to come from the closest people in their life, as it did with me. And this is why. And this is why they think the way they think. And so preparing them for early negatives and addressing the idea that most humans suffer from approval addiction, I think gets them to realize it when it hits them. Paul said that. And I think that's what establishes early. So I'd say number one, mental toughness. If you're willing to get up more times than you've been knocked down, you have a chance to win in business. And you're going to have to invest into yourself, and you're going to have to be a product of mentors. So I say the 3 points I teach people: mental toughness. You're going to have to learn leadership skills, because you're going to have to, build a team around you. Nothing great could be accomplished by yourself. There are no Rambos in business. And then number 3, sales skills. You got to learn how to sell your ideas, whether it's your idea, whether it's to a client, to a prospect, to potential agents that you're going to try to include into your business. So I'd say mental toughness, leadership skills, sales skills, but mental toughness for sure. And I like to just hit it on the head and see if they're basically, don't say I didn't tell you. And what I found is when I address that ahead of time, it gains me credibility, because they're like, maybe this guy Paul is saying is right, and I'm not hiding from the obvious. So those are the 3 things. You got to be mentally tough. And how do you do that? Going through adversity. The only way you get mentally tough is you got to go through adversity. So what I've learned a mentor of mine, and also I believe the book Think and Grow Rich says, with every adversity is the seed of an equal or greater benefit if you look for it. I've had so many adversities in my life, and now I started to realize, wow, if you actually don't just sulk and you actually see what's going on, all those adversities are just blessings in disguise if you go through it the right way. And so now I welcome adversity, and I challenge everybody. I don't steer away from it. I challenge them not to hit it head on and then tell me what you experienced. So that's what we prepare people for. No matter what industry, you're going to have to learn those three things.
You know, I love your thoughts on this, Paul. The financial service business, the network marketing business, the insurance business, I mean, any business where you're dealing with a volunteer army and a volunteer customer, let's face it, a customer, you know, if you're working at Walmart and a guy walks in to buy refrigerators, coming to buy a refrigerator.
Right.
You didn't tell him anything, you took his water, you took his money. I mean, you really didn't tell anything, and you're not compensated very much, frankly.
Right.
In the type of businesses you and I have been in over the years, right? We're compensated very, very well because we go through all of that. So let me ask you this question. How do you help that new agent in the first, whatever, year, 2 years, whatever, to develop that discipline where they realize they may have to knock on 10 doors to get one person to say, hey, yeah, come on, yeah, I don't know if I'm buying, but at least let me in the house, okay, or the office to explain what it is that you do. You know, so they get that discipline down to realize that the 9 people who said no, in theory, made them money, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, I was rejected 9 times. Oh, I only had one person talk to me. It's like, no, the one person talked to you, you made X amount of dollars. Divide that by the 10, and you realize, you know, you made X amount per, you know, per door you knocked on, right? I mean, how do you in your business get them to that discipline point where they realize that, hey, they didn't reject me. They didn't have the time. They didn't want the product. They, you know, their next door neighbor is an insurance agent, blah, 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 blah. How do you get them to that discipline point where they say, hey, I get it. The objective and the income possibility is so big versus some of the nonsense that you got to go through to get there. How do you help them to get that discipline?
Well, I think one, that's a great question, is quantifying it for them. Like they go through 9 and then they get, you know, 9 no's and 1 yes. Every no had an actual value to it. You just have to look at it the right way. If I make $10 at the end, but 9 people tell me no, each no was actually worth $1. So I think if you can change the perspective of them and then also address the fact that some will, some won't, so what, who's next? And we talk about this a lot. So we get into the early negatives. We talk about rejection and the willingness to withstand rejection and understanding what it is, that when people say no, it means not right now. Because we offer a product, people say, Paul, how do you find your clients? I say, who do you know that uses money? They're like, everybody. All right, so you don't have to find clients. Like what you have to do is learn what to say to get them to listen to you. And and we teach human nature. People jump to conclusions. They're supposed to be skeptical. If I am presenting a new idea to them and it's something that looks too good to be true, they're going to be skeptical. So one of the ways to minimize a lot of that is staying in a warm market, especially dealing with people's money. I've been in a cold market and I've been just as good. And then I've worked in a referral warm market. So if I can start to borrow the trust of somebody else who is already credible, that's our system. Your results infinitely go up. And if you start talking to strangers only, which I do that as well, I still want to help everybody, but your results go down, and then you start to almost wonder if you're doing it right, if you're even capable of it. Even at my level, if I went through a lot of cold, and then there's also a right market. So financial services, if I'm talking to 21-year-olds, they're not thinking about life insurance and retirement. You're going to suffer through a lot of rejection. But if you meet a married person with kids, they both have jobs and a home, your results are going to go through the roof. So we talk about the right market. We talk about the concept of rejection. I also know one thing too is there's a book behind me called Go for No. It's a very good book, and it talks about running to the no and fail and being excited to fail and then failing in multiples with people on your team. That's the way you get to the yes. So I also found out not everybody's built for this. I had to, a long time ago, I had to realize as much as people as I want to save, not everybody's here to save themselves. And through the process of finding great people, I would call them leaders, we find them. you know, and then we polish them up. But there's nobody, I cannot, as much as I've done, as much motivation as I've done, I cannot make somebody a leader. They have to have the spark, and then we're just the gasoline. And that's what I was. You can't tell by looking at somebody what's inside of their heart. And so I think those are some of the things. And one final thing I'd say, John, that I didn't really realize, but it's very important, is they need to see how I go through rejection. So I kind of keep them in a protected environment, and we take them on their first 10 training calls, and I'm the one presenting. So if they get told no, they're telling me no. Now I pick the right appointments so that my ratios are higher, but they tell me no. And then I let them see how I'm dealing with rejection and so I'm basically transferring that to them. So there's so many elements to mentoring. It's not just the skill, the technique, the products. It's also, how does my mentor deal with rejection so that they can model that themselves? So it's probably one of the most effective things is watching me go through it. And by the way, I mentioned the rejection. Like, I remember a quote, I believe John Maxwell said it. He says, when you tell people about your successes, you impress them. But when you tell people about your failures, you empower them. Mm-hmm. So I'm always talking about the reason I got this person is because I called 5 people, they all flaked on me, and that's how I got this person. So now they realize, well, Paul gets rejected too, so that when it happens to them, they realize they're not on an island experiencing it themselves.
I'm laughing because there's times people in my business will say to me, well, do people say no to you? I'm like, every single day, because in this environment I'm a big deal, but you step out to the rest of the world, they don't know who you are or care for that matter, right? So yeah, I can relate. So you mentioned Think and Grow Rich. You mentioned Go for No. You mentioned you referred to Kiyosaki's book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. Are there a couple of more books that have helped to inspire you? I mean, probably like the rest of us have a library of thousands of books, but there are a couple others that you'd like to refer to.
Yeah, I'll refer to Steve Siebold's book, 177 Secrets of the World Class, which is great for people that don't like to read, because every chapter is one secret. And then every chapter then refers you to other books, and you can just continuously explore. So when people ask me, I say, what's your favorite book? I say that book sums it all up into one. And he's done, I believe my understanding is since the 80s or what have you, he's probably interviewed more millionaires, billionaires, et cetera, than most people, and he put it all in a book. Mm-hmm. So that's a great one. Another one that I found was really good. I believe this book is kind of what gave way to Think and Grow Rich. It was called The Wisdom of Andrew Carnegie as Told to Napoleon Hill. Mm-hmm. And they used to call it How to Raise Your Own Salary, but it's literally Napoleon Hill interviewing Andrew Carnegie, and they just go through all the different elements of what takes a successful person. And I thought that was a great book. And then the final one, which I would just tell you the name, but he's got so many different, he's probably one of the authorities on leadership, is John Maxwell. So Developing the Leader Within You, Developing the Leaders Around You, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and looking at leadership from a science. I think some people are leaders, they just have a personality to get people around them and influence them. But understanding that sales and leadership is actually a duplicatable process. And John Maxwell takes this intangible thing called leadership and influence and actually makes it bullet points. So you can, one, absorb it, but then transfer it and build other leaders. So amongst many other, I'm very a big fan of thinking. So, whether it's psycho-cybernetics, or whether it's the power of the subconscious mind, I really started to realize, wow, the power of our subconscious and the habitual thinking patterns is what draws into us our reality. So I love that stuff. And that's what allowed me to shape my thoughts. Still working on it, but
Great.
It's a lifelong thing.
So let's talk a little bit about this. So your current company is GFI, which stands for
Global Financial Impact.
Global Financial Impact. Okay. And you're an IMO, and I know what an IMO is, but a lot of our audience may not. So why don't you share a little bit about what an IMO does?
So insurance marketing organization. So we're ultimately I would consider it network marketing and life insurance. So we give you a shot to build your own agency using a network marketing type model. We're already a very lucrative industry. Financial services, as you had mentioned, has been very profitable for years. Insurance companies, stock brokers, the stock market. I think when we see the movies, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's whatever, we know it's a very lucrative industry. That's more the sales end of it. And when it comes to leadership development and sales management, and we can build multiple layers in the insurance industry, that's more so what an IMO is. So a multi-layered financial services business, if that was to answer your question, is what an IMO is.
And you're very passionate. I mean, the couple of times that we've talked previously, one of the things I love about you and admire, Paul, is you love your business. How do you stay in love with it? You've been doing it 20 years. You've been obviously very successful. You raised your family, right? You got grandkids now. You know, you're in your 40s. It's like, how do you get up every morning with that fire in your belly, right? You know, what Dr. Hill called a burning desire, or Zig Ziglar called it that, and, you know, on and on. I mean, every great self-development person's referred to a burning desire. How do you do that? What are some of the tools that you use besides what we've already talked about? Is there something else that says, hey, Paul, get your butt out of bed at 5 a.m., get your workout, get your prayers, get your other stuff done, and get at it, and you're doing it after all these years so successfully? What is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is. You always hear a why, and you got to have a why, and your why will evolve because eventually you're going to hit your why, I guess. And I tell my reps this and my people this all the time, because when I see them not performing, it's just an indicator they don't really know what their why is. And a lot of times we have what? Approval addiction. So when I ask them what their why is, they say, I want to retire my wife. I want to save the whales and save the world. And I look at their performance and they don't do anything. And I'm like, that can't be your why. I was like, your wife will be a lot happier if you actually find the why that motivates you to make the income to actually retire her, versus saying you want to retire her, but it doesn't really motivate you. And so she's still working. So I think rather than worrying about what our true motivations are, if it really fires you up, you'll know. Like I knew when I met in St. Martin, I knew that that was going to be the woman. If she accepted it, I fell in love at first sight. I didn't know I had butterflies in my stomach. She became a why. They always say, you know, when you find the one. And so if your goals don't motivate you, if you need an alarm clock in the morning, you don't really know what your why is. You don't really have goals. And I've been there, and I won in business, and then I kind of retracted back to forgetting my why, because you got to constantly evolve on your why to stretch for more and more and more. And as I've heard, happiness and success, etc., it's in the process, not the destination. 100% true. Because once you get to it, you're probably going to realize it wasn't even it's the person you became in the process is what's the most valuable part of the experience. And then once you buy that house, it becomes a house. Once you get the watch, it becomes a watch. So I started to realize that, wow, I was more in the beginning when I had no money and I didn't make any money in the beginning. I was so excited. I didn't even realize I wasn't making any money because it was the venture that I was pursuing, which is what I've learned about a lot of people like you, John, and many successful people. It's like, why are they still working? Because it's a process. They enjoy what they're doing. So in the beginning, somebody had stole my car. I was building a 69 GTO, and somebody stole my car, and I had all my blood, sweat, tears, and money wrapped up into it. They took it. And then now I'm broke again. So my why was, I got to get my money back. I got to get something. I'm not going to go back to a job. I don't want a job. I don't want to stay at a job. So what can I do to find out what I got? And so I went to work and I attacked this thing. By the way, when I got into the industry, I dropped out of college and I cut off every source of income. What I found out was I embrace fear because I run away from it. I learned in managing people, the people get motivated through running away from fear or running towards pleasure, the carrot or the stick, as they say. Mm-hmm. And you got to know who you are. My wife loves running towards pleasure. Me, I like running away from fear. I almost got to create something scary because I know that motivates me to run away from it. So I was running. And then when I got into the industry, everybody thought it was a scam. Everybody thought I was being taken advantage of. They thought I was trying to scam them. And I got so mad that my fear was they were going to actually believe the nonsense they were saying. So I worked so hard just to prove them wrong. I'd love to say I wanted to change everybody's financial life and all that. I was just trying to shut up the naysayers, but it motivated me so much to run away from the fear of them thinking I really was in a scam, or I'm sure we've all heard that when you're in a network marketing type model or pyramid. which I didn't even know what that was at first. And then you start to hit your goals and you get a little soft, to be quite honest. I got a little soft. And then recently, one of the reasons, I guess necessity is the mother of invention, but we had it on our mind. We went through some things with our previous company, and there were some disagreements with corporate, which is why we didn't want corporate governing entrepreneurs when they've never done what we've done. So we said we need to have an entrepreneurial endeavor that's governed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. So we had a little bit of a disagreement, and come to find out in my previous, we call it the practice company, because I'm not going to say anything negative. It was actually practice for the real game that we're in now. I didn't own what I was building. I didn't realize the whole time my whole message had been ownership, 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 generational wealth. After you pass away, everything you built transfers over. Come to find out, we didn't even own it. And I felt like I had been lied to. So when I separated from that company, I felt all over, even though I had assets now, I felt like I don't have an income. And I had to cut off my income. And then all of a sudden, we started this new venture, took a risk, I guess, although it was very calculated. And I just got excited again. I had lost a little enthusiasm during the pandemic and maybe the late, 2018, 2019. And all of a sudden now I had a reason. And this was our baby. And I just attacked. My wife was probably like, what got into this guy? I just don't even want to go to sleep. And I don't even want, and I can't wait to wake up in the morning. And now, just to answer your question, John, it's the people that I promised things to. It's everybody I looked them into the eyes and they followed me and they got into this company. Some of them were already doing well. They stopped what they were doing just to follow my direction. And I sold them on it. And I put my back against the wall by selling everybody on, I'm going to take them there. Now I got to deliver. And what gets me up is delivering for the people I made promises to. What gets me up is my son, now that he's 13, seeing his dad working hard and seeing what real hard work is, because I was already financially independent by the time they were born. So they probably seen me in my soft years. And now he works harder at basketball. I'm going to take him to the rec center right after this. He's going to knock on the door, take me to the rec. He just wants to work. And I think your example is so powerful. I just got to keep providing an example to people because they tell me I'm a good one. So I'm going to honor what they say, and I can't let my people down. And that's what keeps me going.
Well, I think you said something that touched a nerve. I mean, I love the Rocky movies. And if you think about the one where he goes to Russia to fight Drago, whatever one that was, 3 or 4 or 2, or it wasn't 2, it was 3 or 4, I think it was. And same thing, he got soft. So what did he have to do? Get out of the beautiful gym, go to the dumpy gym, go train outside, right? And get that hunger back, because as human beings, and I think you and I can speak about this as men, and women probably can't do, but we're guys, so we'll go from that standpoint. You need to kick your own butt sometimes. You know what I mean? You need to say, hey, man, you know what? Yeah, life's good. Bills are paid. But is that all there is? I mean, do you work just to pay the bills? That's what employees do. That's what 9 to 5 people do. Guys like you're out to set the tone in leadership because you're leading other human beings to better their lives and their situations, right? So kind of kicking your own butt like that, I really admire the fact that you're willing to admit that, because we've all been there, by the way, yours truly included. Where it's like, well, life's good. I don't work. Come on, But you said something else that really touches a nerve, and that is that leadership. That leadership is so important for your young son to say, wait a minute. When he's your age, he's going to tell your grandkids or great grandkids, hey, you know what? Let me tell you what Grandpa used to do. And he was already there. Grandpa already had the toys, he had the cars, he had the good golf clubs, and ate at the best restaurants, and et cetera, et cetera. But he went back to work and took his skills and created a new enterprise that became dynastic. And that's what he's going to remember, right? And I know I can see this in my own kids now that they're 30, 21, and 20. Some of the things that they say and that they learned, and I go, where'd you learn? I'll give you one fast example, Paul. Love your thoughts on something similar to this. My daughter, who lives in Northridge, California, now to be 30 this year, she got herself into some trouble, okay, with some drugs a number of years ago. Good kid, good, clean-cut Christian kid, Christian education, the whole deal. Got involved with the wrong guy, went down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Human beings, we make mistakes. And we put her in rehab. And she had heard me say something that one of my mentors said many, many times, that his mentor said back in the 60s. And that was, day at a time, brick at a time, process by process is how you build a business. We're leaving the rehab thing after 30 days. And this kid's gone through hell. We're getting in the car. She looks up at me and she says, day by day, brick by brick, process by process, how I'm going to beat this thing down.
Yeah.
Right? Even though I was quoting somebody else, but she had heard that from, calls like we're on now, or me doing a meeting or a conference call. And the point being, and I'd love your thoughts on this, that leadership that we provide for people, it's micro in business, because business is how we pay our bills and make sure we stay ahead of the rent collector.
Mhm.
But our lives are so much bigger than this, and the people that we impact directly and indirectly, our families most importantly, but sometimes it's the guy in the 47th row that we're never going to meet that writes something down and it changes his life.
Yeah.
Love your thoughts on that in terms of, as we kind of close this, in terms of your role now in helping not only your 13-year-old, but the other 13-year-olds or 31-year-olds or whatever that listen to your messaging and take your leadership and apply it both in their business and, more importantly, in their life. Where are you going next?
Yeah. Like, leadership is influence, and being a person of, being an example. I think the best, it's not management. Management it's like ascended authority. I'm here, you have to do what I say. Leadership is more elected authority. I want you to lead me because I admire who you are. And so I just work on being the best version of myself at the end of the day. And so, yeah, like I just think about my dad. My dad's old school. My parents had me about the age that I am right now, as if I was having my first child. So as I was growing up, like the old school values that people had, when you shake somebody's hand, you do what you say you're going to do, just the traditional American values that have become so derelict these days, I think. I learned that. And my dad was hard on me. I was one of the few people in my neighborhood that actually had a father. So my dad was on me. And I didn't like it at the time. I used to say things like, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be my kid's friend when I grow up. I'm going to let my kid go to the party and all the stuff. And now that my dad's deceased, unfortunately, because, they had me a little later. Now that I got my babies and stuff, I wish I could just apologize for all the stuff that I had said, because everything they said and everything they taught me, and the example my father was and my mother was, I never heard my dad complain. My dad grew up in the Jim Crow South, always had a smile on his face, never complained about anything. I never heard my dad say a curse word, more than probably my kids could say for me right now. I never heard my dad argue with my mom, maybe behind closed doors, but never in person. And just such a good man that I completely went away from. I think he would use the prodigal son as the example, and circled back now to become the ultimate version that I admire my dad so much. So I think leadership is example. So whether or not we think people are listening, and we hope that they actually are. And they're going to follow our example. My dad used to smoke cigarettes because in the early 1900s, everybody smoked cigarettes and nobody knew the damage that it can cause, and health concerns. So my dad would tell me one thing and say, don't smoke. And then I would watch the man that I admired smoke, and I looked how he'd hold the cigarette. And then I would go, when he would leave, I'd find his cigarettes and I tried to hold that. So it wasn't, what people say, what you do speaks so loudly, I can hardly hear anything that you're saying. And as I look at examples, I'm like, we have to be an example because a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I could see why your daughter would say that. And hopefully my kids would say the same thing one day. And I have confidence that if we plant the right seeds in the right, which they are the right soil, but we plant the right seeds in them, they'll all circle back regardless of what they go through. And one last thing on that, because I've done a lot of speaking, in front of thousands of people at my previous company and at my current company. And it was, it was from Canada, all the different provinces, all the states in the United States. And this was before Zoom. And I would go places and they were like, Paul, do you remember what you said in 2017 when you talked about the employee and the employer and the corporation and the plantation and all this kind of stuff that I was telling people, and the master and the manager and the slavery and the salary and all? I got a lot of them. And they were like, that hit me. I never heard anybody say that. As a matter of fact, I'm making 300 grand a year. When you said that, Paul, I quit my job. I've retired my mom. I bought my mom a home. Man, you changed my life. I'm like, who are you? I didn't even know who they were. And they were in a stadium of maybe 20,000 people. And I was like, wow, who we are, our story, the things we've gone through. People are going to see the shiny stuff that you have. Let them know what you've gone through. Let them see what you go. Have honor when you go through it. Be an example. Let other people see that everything isn't squeaky clean and roses and butterflies, but look what can happen. And I think, I look at it like, the word would be example, but let's say my kids don't want to do math. Going to go to the rec center. Gotcha. Let's say my kids don't want to do math. If I'm the kind of person that doesn't do what I don't want to do, then what can I say to them? Sure, do what dad does. When he doesn't want to do it, he just doesn't do it. So you don't want to do math, then don't do it. I have the authority to say, look, I don't want to do this, but I do it anyway because it has to get done. Now I have the moral authority to teach them the same thing. So I just, John, you're a good man. I think we're important, and we're going to be one of the most documented generations of world history, because long after we're gone, your podcast and the people how many more people is that going to affect after we're not even here? Wow. So I admire what you're doing, and this is powerful.
Thank you for being here, Paul. This has been great. I know your son wants to go and shoot some.
It's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, to that point, there's a new title that I was not familiar with. You may be. It's Evergreen. To describe that, it's like it's evergreen, like a tree that comes back every year after the winter time, for example, or your lawn or something, And I never heard that expression until about 2 months ago. Somebody was saying, "Well, what you're doing is evergreen," and I was like, "I got to stop you," and they explained that. I said, "That's brilliant," but yeah, you just reiterated that, because when you're gone, it's like, I go back, I watch Jim Rohn stuff. I love Jim Rohn. I met Jim Rohn a couple of times. He was such a unique guy. I met Zig Ziglar totally by accident. One day I was at the gym and he was taking his wife to the beauty shop next door. And I'm like, I look outside, I see Zig Ziglar. I'm like, well, let Zig Ziglar get away. I'm pulling him in the gym and talking to him. And we did. And we talked for a better part of an hour. But my point is, yeah, when we're gone, our sofas don't mean much that we leave to our family. What's going to mean much? The old days, it was the books, and it still is. Mm-hmm. But now I think it's the books, the podcasts, and the teachings that they can take from and say, my dad said this in 2025 or whenever it happens to be. So I love that point. Paul, I'm going to give you the last word. If anybody wants to contact you, where do you want to reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Paul J. Hart. So my first and last name, as you see there, with the J in the middle. And go ahead and reach out to me on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I check my messages. We're looking for people that see the vision that we're going. We'd love to connect and just, if not collaborate, get to know one another, and have a conversation. We're always looking for good people. If there's a way I can provide some advice from what I've gone through, or maybe mentor somebody in some way, shape, or form, feel free to reach out. I don't charge for my mentorship or anything like that. And if you're interested in the financial business or looking for a career, or maybe the right kind of model, the right kind of leadership and environment, we'd love to have a conversation. We're in the growth phase of our life and in our business. So reach out, and we'd love to have a conversation. And thanks, John. I mean, this has been a pleasure. I love just hanging out with successful people that are winning. And just based on our conversation here, I know success is a recipe, and anybody can copy it if you're willing to get around the right people. So by us connecting and you relating to me, I know I'm on the right track. So thank you for everything you do. One day I'm going to pay it forward, have my own podcast, stand on your shoulders, and hopefully make an impact like you're doing. So thanks a lot.
I appreciate that, and continued good success. And hey, enjoy the gym tonight. Those are mine are past that now. Mine were hockey players and ice skaters, figure skaters. My daughter was a figure skater. My son was a hockey player. And I drive by the rinks now some days, including today, and think, wow, it's not that long ago we were all of these places, and now all of a sudden they're adults. It's like, how'd that happen? So
Doesn't time fly? Like my son's voice just got deep this year. And so I was like, whose voice? And now there's two men in the house. And I'm like, I remember when you were like this, like it was yesterday. And so, guys, life is too short to not be happy, to not do what you enjoy, and make an impact and go for what you believe in and what makes you happy, because life's too short. So let's go make an impact. And we're trying to make a financial impact, and that's our company. So yeah. And I know you're about health, John, and I know you've come from that, and I'm big on that too. I love what you do with that, because healthy and wealthy. So I think we both, true wealth is health. And you're an example of that.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you, John. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.